Good morning. I'd like to call the Planning and Zoning Agriculture Committee to order for Wednesday, May 20th. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Featherling?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Chad?
No.
I can't hear him.
All right, he's gonna fix his. Can you hear us, Chad?
Because we cannot hear you. Could you maybe?
Okay, so he's gonna fix it. Mr.
Okay.
Washington?
Present.
Mr. Tholen? Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Peters?
Present.
Ms. Dunbar? Mr. Kinzinger?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
I guess, Mark, did you say that the shipper's not real sure too?
Mr. Smith?
Present. Here.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Dennell?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no request for public comment. Approval of minutes, February 19th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is that Mr. Smith, I believe?
Second.
Second?
So moved.
Mr. Payton? All those in favor say aye.
Yes, sir. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under building report, is there a motion to approve the building report?
So moved.
Mr. Washington, a second?
I'll second.
Was that Ms. Peters?
Yes.
All right, and all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Floor is yours, Dell.
Okay, the building report. The building report for April, we had 54 permits and brought in revenue of $11,058, which included extra fees and fines as well. This is down from last year. Last year we had 33,000 for the same month of April. Looks like the real difference here is last year we had 6 new homes for April. We do not have any new homes on April 2020. But we do have about 5 new homes going in May, so it looks like maybe we may make up for it in May.
I'm sorry, what was the end of that, Dell? You said 5 new homes?
We got 5 new homes going right now in May, so it looks like we might make up for some of that in May.
Okay. Any questions about the report you got for Dell? Anybody? Okay. I just had one quick question, Dell, kind of related to that. How's the software project going?
We are having a basically a kickoff meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. It'll be a Zoom meeting. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's getting worked on. They've already been working on it. They're going to be discussing what they've done so far with us tomorrow.
Okay. Did they give you any indication of timeline before, we have install and data population and everything?
Not recently, but back when we entered into the contract, they told me it'd probably be about 60 days before we actually got hands on the software.
Okay, is that when the yearly maintenance fees start and everything, or do they start from day one?
Yearly maintenance fees start after they prorated those.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. There was a noise.
Yeah, they prorated out the maintenance fees.
Okay, all right. That's good.
Okay.
Any other questions about that from the board or the committee? Okay. All right, you can keep going then, Dell. I guess we got a ZBA.
Zoning Board of Appeals case 20-1 is a request for a variance for lot width. Let me share it on the screen here. See if that works. There you go. The subject site is owned by Municipal Trust and Savings Bank, trust number 1614. The owner is actually Larry Mentz, owns that trust. Property is zoned I2 industrial, general industrial. And this property is unique in the fact that it actually has two different businesses being operated on the property, one on the south end and one on the north end. The owner would like to divide off the one on the north so that he can sell it separately from the one on the south. And our zoning ordinance requires 150 feet of lot width in the I-2 district. This parcel, when completed, would only have 85 feet. So that is a variance of 65 feet to the ordinance. This went to public hearing on March 9th. There were no objectors present, and zoning board recommends approval 6-0.
To get into discussion, is there a motion from anyone on the committee?
So move, Andy.
Is that a motion to approve?
Yes.
Or is that Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, and then Joe Swanson, were you the second?
Second.
Okay,
Question. Question.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These buildings are relatively new, that both buildings were built on the property for some stated use, and now we want to sell one of those buildings off. Are we setting a bad precedent? We allowed these to be built once. Now we're letting them spin off. Can't this happen over and over again?
This is not uncommon in the commercial and industrial districts to have multiple principal uses on a property. Think strip mall or something of that nature. And even though they tend to start out with under one ownership, over time, a lot of times the individual buildings do get sold off. So I don't know that we're setting any precedents here.
Question?
Yes, was that Mr. Kirkstra? Mr. Long, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. How about the egress on and off the property? You know, there's always a concern about driveways being too close together. Is that going to be a problem for this property?
Both already have their driveways established.
Separate driveways.
Yes.
Alrighty, is there any other questions, comments from the committee? Or we have I guess a motion to approve on the floor. If we're ready, I can ask for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, Dell, you had a couple other items?
I do. William Hem, the chairman of our zoning board of appeals, recently resigned. You should have his resignation letter in your packet, which leaves us with two issues. One, we need another member on our zoning board of appeals, and two, we need to appoint another chairman. Currently, Gene Rademacher is the chairman or vice chair of the zoning board of appeals. And I would recommend we move him up to chairman and that we make Dave DeYoung vice chairman of the zoning board of appeals.
Mr. Chairman, that motion. I'd second that motion.
Okay, who was the original motion from?
Chad.
Chad? Okay, we have a second.
John.
With Mr.
Featherling.
Featherling. Have both of these gentlemen been notified, and are they good with taking these positions? Or
Yes,
do they
I
just
have
not
talked
show
to
up to a
both.
meeting and then they're going to be appointed as chairman?
No, I have
'Cause that's the way we do it.
talked to both of them,
Okay, all right.
and they are both willing to take those positions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Featherling.
I'd like to let the board know how long Mr. Hem's been there, and I served with him for many years, 7 or 8 years on that committee. And it's going to be a great loss, but Gene Rademacher is a really good guy. He understands what's going on, and he'll do great at being chairman.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. DeYoung's been there for many years also. I think it'll go very, very well.
Okay. Alrighty, well, that'll be obviously an opening at some point, so let's go ahead and we'll talk about this right now, but any other thoughts on that? So is there a motion to accept the resignation and the appointments as presented?
So move.
Mr. Dunhill, a second?
Featherling?
Oh, wait a minute, we already have a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, we already had the motion, I apologize. So we'll go to the vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
While we're still on that subject, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I do have talking about a replacement for the zoning board. I do have a map I can share of the townships,
Yeah, go ahead.
if you don't mind.
Is that the representation, Del?
It is, let me page down here. There. If you can see the map on the screen there, every township that is in red already has a member from that. So for the replacement for Mr. Hem's position as a zoning board member, we would need somebody from one of the townships that is not highlighted in red. So Momence, Pembroke, St. Ange, Bourbonnais, Otto, Salina, Essex, Norton, and Yellowhead.
Mantino.
Or Kankakee. No, we already have Mr. Dennis Martin from Mantino.
Okay, right.
So, the statutes say that we can't have more than one member from a township at the time of their appointment. So, if you know of anybody who might be interested, send them to the administration office for the applications.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Del. Under transportation, we have the long-range transportation plan. Is that
I'm going
Ben?
to turn that over to Ben.
And my beautiful ascot.
You look like you're robbing a
so-
train.
This actually, so just for the edification of the committee, both of these are pretty straightforward. I don't really have a big request on this first one. So I just want to kind of go through the process a little bit and inform everybody what's happened here. And it kind of goes smoothly, and the plan goes through the RPC. The MPO committee approved it at our last MPO meeting, and we now have a long-range transportation plan for Kankakee County. And I want to just share with the committee today kind of how, I don't want to say monumentous this is, but this is very important for our future planning, our TIP funds. This is how we actively have the capacity to utilize our TIP. And I wanted to notify the committee today that we've finalized our 45-day public comment period. MPO, TAC, and policy have taken the appropriate action, and the long-range transportation plan has been sent to both Federal Highway and DOT, and we now have an active long-range transportation plan. Pretty big feat by, at the staff level. Our staff's done a very good job going through it. There was several new requirements under the FAST Act that came online. We're a lot more focused on performance measures and safety, and all of those required pieces have been installed in the plan, and now we will have an active plan for the next 5 years. No action today. I just wanted to notify the committee of what had happened in previous meetings.
All right. Then you had something about CARES Act.
Yeah, so and that we've received notification from IDOT. So we're receiving funding under the CARES Act for transit, and part of that is action has been taken by both this committee and then, I guess a recommendation by this committee and then action by the full county board for us to apply for funds through Federal Highway, FTA 5311 and DOPE to do our transit. And what IDOT is now telling us is that we need to utilize CARES funding in place of those funds. So it won't affect the way our transit system operates. It won't affect the way the money flows internally, but what might be required, and that's why we're in front of the committee today, is we might have to have the chairman sign a new document for, with a CARES funding title on it instead of a 5311 funding title. And we didn't want to, move through the process as we are replacing the funds. IDOT has asked us to utilize these, but they haven't gone to say, well, the documents you submitted for 5311 are sufficient for that yet. So we might, before the next county board meeting, be putting together documentation for CARES funding to fund 5311 in lieu of that, the existing funding mechanism. And we didn't want to automatically assume that the chairman could sign that, so we wanted to work it through committee approach. None of the activities will change. It's still show bus. It's still everything. And in your memo, I just want to highlight kind of the last paragraph. We're still doing transportation through the pandemic. There's encouraging providers to separate themselves on the vehicle. People are wearing masks on the vehicle. If they're showing symptoms, not cooperating with the mask, they're not riding in the system. We're being as safe as we can while still meeting the federal mandate to offer transportation to everyone.
So the amount of financial commitment that we've already passed with roll call vote previously will not change, just where that's assigned to. Is what
So
you're saying.
we were swapping potentially one grant out for another.
Okay.
But the paperwork that the chairman that you signed previously says 5311. We just wanted to make sure if you have to sign a new slew of paperwork, you've been authorized via that resolution to sign the 5311. It might now, instead of saying 5311, say CARES Act.
Okay. Well, I guess before a motion is made, it sounds like we would need a roll call vote approving whatever that previous amount was, and it would authorize the chairman to sign the new agreement not to exceed what the old number was. And if it is anything different, then it would come back to committee because it's substantially different than what they've already voted
so
on.
it's 15,000 was the amount authorized previously.
Okay. Is the committee okay with that if the paperwork comes in authorizing me to sign it, as long as it's not more than that already agreed upon amount that we had previously passed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that would be the motion then, if somebody wants to make that.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Featherling, a second?
I will.
Mr. Kinzinger, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. So if any other questions about that? If anything is different, but beyond who the awarding agency is, then we'll come back to committee.
Yes.
Okay, well then let's do a roll call just to make sure on that, please.
Mr. Featherling,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Ms. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Alrighty, motion carries. Anything else, Ben?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Do you just real briefly, Ben and I have been working on a lot with local grants and things like that. He's got a lot of experience in that area. He hounds that pretty well. And I don't know if there's any updates about what you've been doing, maybe with the NICOR project in Hopkins Park. Anything to report to the committee?
I think that's fair. So kind of just so everybody's aware, from the initiation of the pandemic, a lot of the existing funding streams got swept into COVID response. But what is very nice in some of that COVID response is the state has initiated quite a few economic development initiating programs. So a couple of the ones we're working on right now, which has been much different than the typical programming, is we have currently a $5 million cap. So it's grant 4 is $500,000 up to $5 million for economic development support, public infrastructure under the Rebuild Illinois. And in the COVID response piece, Department of Commerce and the governor's office has initiated what they're calling Fast Track. So it's a $25 million fund that we can apply for. And one of the things that we've been working on with the state attorney's office, Chairman Wheeler, Hopkins Park, is to put an intergovernmental agreement together to allow us to be the fiscal agent for their grant funding. As we kind of put that forward and move that forward, we're looking at funds to help offset an existing delta in the current NICOR funding. So there's a couple funding scenarios, a couple project scenarios for NICOR in Pembroke Township and Hopkins Park. We're still short somewhere around $5 million, and it's very serendipitous that this fits into that, potentially that program. So I'm hoping to be applying, and I have this expectation that we'll be applying for funds for June 30 grant application for at least a full $5 million grant to assist in getting that initial delta taken care of. Now, the chairman's office, Mr. Ronan, Senator Joyce, Representative Parkhurst are working on legislation with the NICOR team to try and get another avenue covered. But we're really kind of belt and suspendering the approach to this, making sure that we've applied for all appropriate grant funds while still getting some legislation pushed forward to allow more access to funds for that area and potentially other areas in the state. So we've got 3 bills, 2 bills in the House and 1 bill in the Senate. But unfortunately, with the truncated General Assembly of the next 3 days, today and the next 2 days, we don't believe they're going to see any of this. We probably won't see this action until veto. So we still kind of on our front have been working on the grants to try and secure the funds so we can get the project moving forward. And then as more funds become available, as the legislation moves through the General Assembly, that could just bolster that project and make it a little bigger of a project and get a little more done with it.
So there's, just to the committee and anybody that's watching, there's a lot going on behind the scenes to try to keep up with this ever-changing situation. And then things keep getting pushed out, and they're only taking care of certain things in the legislature right now. Me and Ben talk on a regular basis because I see a lot coming across my desk. He hounds it and figures out where our opportunities are. We're lucky to have a professional in this area on our team. So I just wanted the committee to know, beyond all the transportation stuff that he does, part of his job is this stuff. And it's a benefit not only to the county, but all the communities within the county, because he's on loan to them, if you will, to be their resource as well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, about any of these activities and what's going on, but one way or another, we're doing everything we can to make sure that pipeline, that natural gas pipeline, goes into Hopkins Park. And then another part of that with our representatives is to make sure that the appliance conversions, the piping and everything to go into the houses is addressed as well, because a pipeline doesn't do you any good if it doesn't get into the house. So there's a lot on that area that we're working on, and this fiscal upheaval that we're all dealing with is the only thing that's limiting our action right now and what's going on in Springfield. So, Mr. Payton, did you have something? I thought I heard you in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that I fully 100% support this issue. And I was glad they put in a motion.
Well, appreciate that, sir. The one thing that Ben touched on, and it's a big deal, is that Hopkins Park has agreed to that the county will be the fiscal agent. So we will be managing the grant monies and the distribution of that and paying the vendors, the audit trail, the grant reporting. They don't have the resources to do those internally with big staff, and we have that mechanism already built here at the county. So I very much appreciate.
I quite understand that.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the mayor and Sam's work out in that area to do that, because it helps things move forward a lot quicker, because sometimes things are hung up on the awards because of different certifications and things like that. That this should only help make this a reality, which is what we're all working for. So, and we still got more to go. There's still some heavy lifting to do. So I appreciate that, Ben. Unless you have something else, just want to mention how impressive your mustache is, sir. It's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's truly
growing into
phenomenal.
Full beard now.
Yeah,
really very upset with that. And one other thing, just this is a notification. Tomorrow, the closure on 4552 Bourbonnais, just north of Burns Road, will start. So it'll be about a 3-week closure. MPO staff has worked with Bourbonnais quite a bit on, myself and others trying to work on that Riverside development, that flooding in that area, and they will do a 3-week-ish closure to lower that box culvert under 4552. So just if you need to get around there, keep that in mind next little bit.
Thank you. Alrighty, thanks, Ben. Moving on under GIS. Del, did you have something on the aerial update?
Yeah, I just wanted to let the committee know that the aerial photography has been flown back in late March. There was a few, because of weather issues, a few paths that were flown in early April. So all the aerial photography is in the can, and we are currently in the quality control portion of the project, where they're checking for edge mapping and issues with the laying it over the top of the digital elevation model. I'm going to share my screen here and show you a sample of the new photography. This is 3-inch pixels. It's very clear. So you can see, you can make out, this is the 189 East Court Street building. You can make out the equipment on top of the roof, and that's not even as far down as we can zoom. We can,
Wow.
it does start breaking up when you get really close, but it's very nice. We are expecting final delivery probably late June, early July. So just wanted to give you an update on where we're at on that.
Oh, sounds good.
Okay.
Any questions there from the committee on GIS?
Yeah, did Delbert ever fill that spot from a board member for the GIS committee?
No,
I have not.
No, has not.
Okay.
So we still need somebody, and if you know a guy, they have to be a board member, or
I might know a guy.
a guy or a gal. So we need one more. Okay, moving on. Thanks so much, Del. Any old business before we get to the new business?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Kinzinger.
this is a question for Delbert. When we're setting up that software for the building department, were we able to simplify that flow chart that we observed on the wall when we all met together? Or is that still as complicated as ever?
Well, the process is the process, so that process is still complicated. We are going to be looking for various ways that we can simplify it, and I think the software will help, because it'll certainly help us keep from making mistakes, because it won't let you go on to the next step of the process till you've completed the previous step, so that will certainly help.
Are all the processes necessary?
By one statute or ordinance or another, yes.
Thank you.
So what you're saying, Del, is that flow chart was created based on what we need to do in the process that is dictated by statute, and there's really no internal operational decision made to add something that's just because it makes it easier or more complicated for you, correct?
Right. No,
Okay.
I mean, that is all dictated by various ordinances and statutes.
Okay.
And not every project needs to use that entire flow chart. I mean,
That was
flow
for
chart.
everything you do pretty much in that
That was
process.
everything.
Yeah.
Very rarely do we get a project that does everything.
Okay.
Could we update statutes and ordinances, or is that beyond our county government?
Some is beyond the county government, such as there was a large portion of that just for agricultural exemptions, which is dictated by state statute. So the county government has little involvement in that. It's just something we have to do. There are ways we could probably streamline our own zoning ordinance some, but that would take time and money. So
Well, might be something to look at for the rest of this year is to take a look at it. Once we get this thing implemented, we could figure out ways to save.
right, and we are going to be looking as they build this of ways that we can shave processes. Some processes are probably going to change a little bit just because they'll be digital now.
Hey, Del, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Featherly.
Del, when you say money, what you're talking millions or thousands or hundreds? It scares me when you say that.
Definitely thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands. Our zoning ordinance has not been updated a full update since 1996. We periodically do amendments to the ordinance. Just recently, you had the home occupation amendment, where we tweak and fix things, but it hasn't been looked at in depth since 1996. And I don't venture to say what that cost us, but I think it was in around the $80,000, $100,000 range. I can only imagine that price has gone up.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Any other old business? All right, moving on to new. We have the mentioned one opening on the ZBA. I'll be looking at that as well. I'll tell people to contact us for the paperwork. 3 openings on the Regional Planning Commission and 1 opening on GIS. As mentioned, it has to be a board member. So, with that, I guess at this point, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Mr.
Second.
Featherling, second. Mr. Long. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion carries.